So, here again in the pleasant little town of Hinamizawa. It keeps getting more and more eventful as we go, which makes sense for most any kind of story, but alright, so last we left off, we it's hard for me to remember the exact splits. Our folks went off to Tokyo, left us alone in the house. And the town seemed to figure that out. And Rena came over, tried to have us eat dinner with her. Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. And we flat out refused, crushing her fingers in a door and making her go away. Then we ran to our room and talked with Oishi, looked out the window, and she was still there in the pouring rain, saying she was sorry to us. That we couldn't hear. A bit strange. Went to town, went to school the next day, and Mion gave us a very, very chilling stare down and revealed that she knew about Oishi and such. So, now we're about to go back into class. Not sure where we're gonna head off to on this one, but we'll see, we'll see. Alright. Rise. Oh, that's Mion saying that, not the teacher, okay. Attention! Mion made up an excuse for her red eyes by saying there was something wrong with her contacts. Does she even have contacts? After that, neither Rena nor Mion spoke to me for the rest of the day. Neither Satoko nor Rika-chan looked me in the eye. Oh, that's what's going on. Strangely, I didn't feel hurt. Everything had just went back to the way it was. Not quite, not quite. The months since I transferred in had been almost too much fun. That was all. School was supposed to be something like this to begin with. I should have disliked that feeling, but today it felt oddly refreshing. The bell rung, sounding the end of the monotonous school day, which had felt so tense, yet so dull. Since it would cause a lot of unpleasant memories if they asked me to join in to the club activities, I promptly started preparing to go home without even looking at them. I stuffed the contents of my desk into my bag, wrapped my hand around Satoshi's now familiar bat, and began heading towards the entrance. I was assailed by both the exhausting relief that nothing had happened today and the tiring possibility of the same thing repeating tomorrow. But deep down inside me, far beneath in the recesses of my heart, achingly, I knew this would be the last day of this cycle. I couldn't tell how the ending would be, whether it would end as I wished it to end, or if it would end as I hoped it wouldn't. Regardless, in the current state, there was something more important than how things would end. There was something I wanted to know. Why did I have to be killed? How did it come to this? Why? For what purpose? The sunlight was relentless. The sun, the heat, even the air. They wouldn't give me any answers. Or could it be that the cries of the Higurashi were desperately trying to tell me something? Somewhere, mixed in with their shrieks, Tomitake-san and Satoshi were also probably trying to tell me something. I simply haven't been able to realize it yet. When I do realize it, I wonder if I will be amongst the Higurashi fruitlessly crying to the next victim. Glancing down at my feet, I saw Higurashi on its back, spasming weakly. Bwee, bwee, bwee. There was still much of the summer left, yet this one was already chirping its last song. I couldn't tell what it was saying, no matter how hard I listened. But I had to try. I had to try to listen to what it was desperately trying to tell me. At that moment, the shrills of the Higurashi ceased all at once, as if they had huddled together, fearing that the person who'd brought them to their dreadful fate had arrived. There was no mistaking it. A presence was approaching. The sound of footsteps was almost non-existent. If the Higurashi hadn't warned me by ending their chirping, I wouldn't have noticed. My exhaustion left me in a heartbeat. In its place was a rush of adrenaline that sharpened all of my senses. I was just barely able to hold back that creeping, suffocating feeling of horror. It wasn't something I could hold back for long. But in this moment, when I needed to be razor sharp, I was able to retain my composure. I wasn't going to shout like I did yesterday. I hid myself calmly amongst the trees, waiting for my pursuer's shadow. Could I get them to pass by me? No, since I was able to hear their footsteps, they were probably also able to hear mine. They might have already been able to tell that I'd hid myself and was holding my breath. The person tailing me, was it Rena, just like yesterday? If it was Rena, I wouldn't hold back. I could just yell at her and make her go away, go ahead like yesterday. If it wasn't Rena, it would depend on how they acted, I guess. The footsteps ambled closer. I swallowed, wiped my clammy hands in my pants, and readjusted the grip on my bat. I could tell that the fear that I had beaten back once was now waiting for another opening to come at me. Who could it be? I peeked out from behind the tree at the person following me. My imagination hadn't led me astray. It was Rena. There was a bit of relief as I realized it was someone I knew, but that feeling left me in an instant. This wasn't the same Rena that I knew. Her eyes were dark and lifeless, but her mouth appeared as if it was carved into a crescent. Yes, it looked like she was grinning slightly. And in her right hand was a hatchet. I hid myself behind the tree once again and recalled the unbelievable sight I just saw. What was that just now? The embodiment of terror, laid bare. Baseball, practicing my swing. There were tons of excuses for me to be carrying a bat. But for that hatchet? There was no excuse for that. A hatchet. Just like that? Keiichi-kun. Are you playing hide and seek? I wonder. My heart was pounding, hard enough that I had trouble breathing. What little composure I had been able to hold on to was now crushed. In its place, cold sweat gushed forth, covering my entire body, letting me know precisely what kind of emotion had taken hold. Not good, not good, not good. I wasn't able to hide myself completely. She already knew I was here. Are you trying to scare me? I wonder. I decided that it would be better to reveal myself now, since there was still space between us, than to allow Rena to come any closer. I adjusted the grip on my bat again, readied myself mentally, and stepped out from behind the tree. Hi. I found you, Keiichi-kun. Rena was pleased that she found me, eliciting a mysterious giggle. Her mouth was smiling, but her eyes told me she was displeased by the fact that I had been hiding. Those eyes, they were just so empty. My legs began to quiver. Not good. In the pit of my stomach, some sort of viscous hot and cold substance began spreading around. If I allowed it, that substance would slip into my bloodstream and undoubtedly freeze all the organs in my body. Not good, not good. I'd be devoured by Rena at this rate. Strike back. Don't lose. What is it? I blustered, hiding behind my bravado. But Rena didn't flinch one bit. Just the same as Keiichi-kun. I'm heading home. Then what about that hatchet? Then what about that bat you're holding? I'm practicing my swing. Then I'm treasure hunting. Rena gave a flippant explanation as to why she had such a fearsome weapon. Treasure hunting? At the treasure mountain near the dam site, I found a new cute thing. So I needed this to dig it out. How could I believe that? You wouldn't believe it, would you? Rena's laugh was obviously very strange. I'd seen Rena's transformation many times before, but the one today was completely different. Like her mischievous tone and the shrewd glint in her eyes, it wasn't something that roundabout. I'm not sure what to say, it was just so obvious. Wait, Keiichi-kun. Rena didn't stop walking, even as she let out that eerie laugh. Whenever Rena got too close to me, I would scurry away and turn back towards her. This cycle repeated over and over. No matter how you looked at it, I was being chased by Rena and was trying to escape. Don't follow me! I can't do that. My house is this way after all. When I met with Rena on this road yesterday, she cowered and trembled as she followed my commands. But today was different. Rena didn't show a hint of trepidation. Actually, wasn't I the one who was cowering? If the way home for Rena and me was the same, that's fine. I'd just change my route. That'd work out, wouldn't it? I turned onto a side street I'd never been down and knew little about. But Rena saw me do that and followed me while laughing. Why? Why? Aren't you going home? Then just go home down the street you normally do. Why would you follow me down this weird little side road? Those thoughts screamed in my head, eventually spilling out of my mouth. Why are you following me? The tone of my voice was already tinged with terror. Because I want to talk to Keiichi-kun. Keiichi-kun wants to talk to Rena too, doesn't he? Doesn't he? I don't want to talk about anything with you. That's a lie, isn't it? There's something you want to ask me about, isn't there? Not at all. I have nothing to talk to you about. That's a lie, isn't it? It's not a lie. Rena's scream echoed, startling some nearby birds into flight. Hello. Welcome to Crazy Town, starring Rena. I cringed in fear. The only other thing I could do was increase my pace. Let's talk, Keiichi-kun. Talk? Talk? Why was I running down this unfamiliar and deserted street? Doesn't Keiichi-kun have something he's worried about? Nothing at all. Nothing at all. I'm not worried about anything. Lies. Even though I was running, even though Rena was walking, why wasn't I getting any farther away? I know. I know. I really do know. You're scared, aren't you, Keiichi-kun? I'm not scared. I'm not scared of anything. Lies. My breathing grew heavy and it felt like my legs were giving out from beneath me. Rena wasn't even breaking a sweat. I'll listen. This time I'll listen. I had no idea what she was talking about or what exactly she wanted to do. This time I'll listen. It'll be different from the time with Satoshi-kun. When she said Satoshi's name, I turned back for a moment. But even as I did that, Rena was still advancing. I couldn't afford to stop. Satoshi-kun was worried too. It looked like he was having such a hard time. But I didn't listen. I was so sad. Where did these streets connect to? All these twists and turns, ups and downs. It's hard to believe that this was even remotely in the direction towards my house. My sense of direction had long since gone out the window. I really regretted it when Satoshi-kun transferred out. I thought that if I had listened, he may not have transferred out. I really regretted that. The road led me deeper into the forest. Wasn't I getting farther away from the village the more I ran? I lost more and more of my composure the more I thought about it. But despite this realization, my inner self was still disturbingly calm. So you see, I vowed. I vowed that if there was someone struggling like Satoshi-kun did, I'd save them. I don't want to see anyone transfer out again. Damn it. What does transfer even mean? I won't let you transfer me. I want to know the same as Satoshi. Come on, Keiichi-kun. Talk to me. I'll be able to understand you, Keiichi-kun. I'm your ally. I started wheezing, out of breath. My lungs were so hot that they felt like they were going to explode. My heart was beating as hard as it possibly could. I should have practiced running instead of my swing. I couldn't even afford to scoff at that stupid thought. If Keiichi-kun doesn't have anything to worry about, he'll go back to normal. Everyone will be back to being friends, and we can enjoy club activities again. Next time we'll team up with and meet them. Yeah, how much fun that would be. Rena couldn't even imagine how much I had wished I could turn back the clock on these past few days. You could be nice to me again too. I want to go searching for treasure again. This time I'll prepare a nice lunch. Actually, we could just go right now. Let's go up to the dam site together. I'll show you the cute thing I just found. I'm sure you'll like it too. My footsteps made pathetic flapping sounds as my legs wobbled and faltered. Hot on my heels, Rena's steps were sharply breaking twigs underfoot. I had to accept it. I was on the run, being chased by Rena. If she caught me, it was all over. I realized it instinctively. I couldn't even begin to think of what the end would entail. Just that if I was caught, it was all over. That's all I knew. It didn't matter how it was going to end. I wouldn't let it end. Not without knowing anything. Not yet. That momentary lapse was all it took. Of all the things that could have happened, my knees buckled underneath me and I crumpled towards the ground. I tried to stand frantically, urging my legs to respond. I used my bat as a makeshift crane to prop myself up, but Rena was already standing right in front of me. Compared to me, out of breath and utterly exhausted, Rena was so cool and composed that she could have froze the air around her. She wasn't breathing hard at all. Rather, I couldn't even sense if her heart was beating. Are you afraid of something, I wonder? It's not like you to tremble, Keiichi-kun. Her expression looked almost affectionate. Those soulless eyes, that mask of affection. As she admonished me for trembling, Rena's hands deftly slipped over her head. The blur of arms as they moved made me feel as if I was staring at the godliness of the thousand-armed Buddha. Then as both of her hands met above her head, the hatchet that she held came into focus. I stared up at it in disbelief. It was all I could do. Tell me, what happened to Satoshi? Rena stayed like that, with that hatchet raised above her head, and solemnly opened her mouth. It was as if she was expressing a farewell to a friend she was never able to see again. That cruel scenario resided somewhere in her actions. I told you. Satoshi-kun transferred out. Enough of that transfer crap. If it means demon away, doesn't it? Doesn't it? You can tell me now, can't you? Who made Satoshi disappear? Was it you? Mia? Or someone in the village? Answer me! I became frantic the more I screamed, but Rena did nothing but maintain the smile frozen on her face. I have no idea what Keiji-kun is talking about. And I'll say it in a way so you do. Who is the perpetrator of this chain of mysterious deaths? You seem to be confused, Keiichi-kun. Huh? There is no human perpetrator. Everything is by Oshiro-sama's will. Isn't Oshiro-sama's curse just superstition? You believe in that too? It's not about believing or not. Oshiro-sama exists. Period. Rena's gaze grew even more gilded. The ferocity of her stare was so intense, not allowing me to question anything. There's just no way that something like Oshiro-sama could exist. You don't believe in Oshiro-sama? There's no way I could believe it. There's no way it could exist. It exists. Oshiro-sama exists. Keiichi-kun should have felt it personally. Yeah, I never felt something like that. Keiichi-kun, haven't you felt someone apologizing to you before? Constantly, on top of that? All noise from the outside world disappeared. Only Rena's voice resounded loudly and terribly. You see, until you forgive them, they'll always be with you. At school, at home, at your bedside. I couldn't understand what Rena was saying. It came to me, too. Oyashiro-sama did. That's why I transferred and came back to Hinamizawa. I don't understand. I don't understand. What does transfer even mean? What was Rena saying? Hasn't Oyashiro-sama come to you as well, Keiichi-kun? I'm probably the only one who you can confide in. I won't let you transfer out. Okay? Rena's demented laughter clanged around inside my head. Was Rena saying Oyashiro-sama came to her as well? That's right. Last night I had heard about that when I asked about Rena. Please keep this confidential. Also, part of this may be speculation. Not all of it may be true. Are you still interested? Oichi-san began speaking. Neither the victims nor the school filed a complaint, so there's no preliminary report. Basically, the police hadn't intervened in this matter, so all of these details are just what I heard from those involved. Meaning, it's not that credible. You said there were victims? Didn't Rena just break all the windows? No. Rena and Ryugo had attacked 3 boys, using a metal bat. 2 of them made it out with only bruises, but the other had been injured so badly that one of his eyes was permanently damaged. Wouldn't that be considered assault? Should the police have arrested her? For whatever reason, the victim never pressed charges. There was no report to the police, so they were beaten with a bat and suffered significant injuries. Normally there would be a criminal investigation. But why didn't they press charges? I tried asking the 3 male victims for their side of the story, but they all were reluctant. It's hard to say, but they were all afraid. Even after she had transferred schools. Oishi-san, could you summarize it starting from the beginning? Rena hit people while she broke the windows? Or was it she started breaking the windows after she got bored of hitting people? They sounded similar, but the meanings were drastically different. On an undisclosed date, Rena Ryugu was conversing with 3 male students, close friends of hers, near the pool storage shed. Who were those 3? I can't reveal their names, but they were close to Rena Ryugu, and it seemed they were a group of friends. She was the lone girl in the group. So it wasn't that strange that the 4 of them were together. So what happened? I don't know the reason why. She took the baseball team's bat that was in the pool storage shed and beat the 3 of them down, one after the other. Huh? There were no witnesses. This was an account pieced together by the information given at the time of the incident. One day after school, Rena and 3 male students were at the pool storage shed talking together. They weren't seeking help. Rather, they usually met up there. It appears it became a heated discussion. At that time, Rena underwent a change. The change was so abrupt that the 3 of them didn't comprehend what was happening. Then, taking the metal bat, she attacked her friends one after the other. Leaving her friends covered in blood, with gashes on their heads, she made her way towards the school building. Then she broke the glass windows one after the other. A few minutes later, a teacher appeared on scene and subdued her. What was this change Rena underwent? What matches up with the statement from the 3 was a sudden change. The point that there was a transformation. Transformation. I also could recall Rena's transformation. I'd seen that change many times before. It was so different from the usual Rena that I couldn't help but believe it was someone else who looked like Rena. That transformation they're talking about. Had it happened before? No, there was nothing like that. As far as I could find out, in her medical history and past, there was nothing like that. Does that happen often? Where people change suddenly, like Rena did? Of course it does. There are plenty of psychological phenomena that could cause something like that. Then, you're saying there was a dormant element in Rena that caused that transformation? I cannot say that for certain, but according to the statements of her friends, it's hard to believe she had such a side to her. Kind, caring, and adorable. Even before she transferred here, she was probably pretty popular in school like she was now. That girl transforming suddenly and assaulting them with a bat. Who could imagine such a thing? Nobody could have seen it coming. I, myself, sometimes believe that I'm mistaken for thinking that was Rena, even now. Then, what happened after that? There was a hospital right across from the school, so the 3 of them were carried in and treated quickly. What about Rena? What about the police? Why wasn't there a criminal investigation? You see, the police can't get involved unless they are called. Even though one was badly injured with permanent damage? Why didn't they file charges? That's what caught my attention as well. Either some threat or pressure was placed on them, or they had a reason they couldn't file charges, even if they wanted to. Talking about you, after all. Of course, you looked into it, didn't you? Well, yeah. But I told you at the beginning, didn't I? That the victims were all very reluctant to talk. They didn't want to touch on the matter. Rather, they didn't want to be involved. Reluctant to talk. Didn't want to touch it. Didn't want to be involved. It resembled the villagers here in Oyashiro-sama's curse. Does the teacher of the school tell you anything? The school is hallowed ground. You could say they tend to keep scandals under wraps. I didn't have a search warrant, so I had to tread lightly, you see. Then, there was no comment from the school? No. They denied the incident even happened. It's just 3 male students were carried in for the blunt force trauma that day. That's all there was in the hospital records. The victims didn't speak. The school denied it happened. Then you don't know anything at all. Yeah. I know nothing other than the incident itself had taken place. The victims also wish this incident to be kept from the public. So if you and I both forget about it, Maibara-san, then this incident will probably just fade away. For a brief period, we sat in silence. At first glance, it looked like a simple assault case. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. The depths were obscured by roiling waves, sinking quietly into the void, as if it never existed to begin with. After that, she was suspended by the school, and during that time, she underwent psychiatric counseling. Did you hear anything from that doctor? Again, they were very professional in regards to their ethics, or at least very tight-lipped. Nothing even after you showed them your badge? I was told to get a warrant. The badge itself has no legally binding authority after all. Very true. Then, how did you know that Rena confessed that it was Oyashiro-sama who did it? There was a nurse I asked in that department. She agreed to help me just from showing her my badge. Then, what did you say? Turns out that the nurse hadn't heard everything. Apparently, all that she remembered was what she overheard from inside the room. The nurse said that at the time, Rena Ryugu was very calm and mild-mannered. It was more like she was confessing her sins at church than a counseling session. She spoke with her mother there for some of it, but partway through, her mother was asked to leave, so it became a private counseling session between just a doctor and Rena for a while. Part with Oyashiro-sama. When did that pop up? Partway through. She screamed the name suddenly. That startled the nurse, and that's why she started listening in. Yes, Oyashiro-sama. Rena suddenly shouted that. I had no idea what was said before that, so I had no idea what the meaning behind it could have been. The doctor, calmly and collectedly, asked Rena to have a seat. Was it this Oyashiro-sama you speak of? Gently, ever so gently. A fundamental part of counseling is to be a good, patient listener. Whoever abandoned Hinamizawa will be hunted down by Oyashiro-sama, and it's finally gotten to me. That's the town you lived in before you moved here. Isn't that right, Ryugu-san? I didn't want to move, but because my mom and dad's circumstances, we had to. But Oyashiro-sama wouldn't allow it. Ryugu-san must have lots of friends in Hinamizawa. Even now, you must be missing them dearly, don't you think? I want to go back. Back to Hinamizawa. No, it's not that I want to go back. I have to go back. I should have gone back much sooner. But now it's too late. Oyashiro-sama has come. Oyashiro-sama is the name of the god in Hinamizawa. Isn't that right? Everyone knows it's Hinamizawa's guardian deity. And if you ever try abandoning Hinamizawa by leaving, you'll incur its wrath. You had moved quite a while ago, didn't you? Then it was just now that this god has arrived, is what you're saying? You might not believe me, but Oyashiro-sama exists. That nurse was then asked by another nurse to do something and left the room. That was all she remembered. That it was Oyashiro-sama's doing, right? I do believe there is some kind of superstition in Hinamizawa, that if you leave the village, then you incur Oyashiro-sama's wrath. You should be familiar with this part, Maebara-san. I knew very well that what those scorned by the village incurred. To hinder the dam construction project, they cursed the construction foreman to his death. Then the following year, Satoko's parents, supporters and leading advocates for the dam, were cursed to their death. But this is the first time I've heard of the curse incurred by leaving the village. This is my first time hearing that. I can understand outside threats being cursed by the village, but why also villagers who leave? Normally, people who leave villages aren't supposed to be cursed, right? I know it's a bit strange to say it, but I could see it as a rule that the people who come in are the ones who would be cursed. Far from Jupiter, far from his thunder. Curses weren't something to chase after people that leave, were they? Oishi-san pondered for a bit, over on the other end of the receiver, then began speaking again. Well, I told you of long ago when Hinamizawa was called Onikakushi, didn't I? I recalled hearing that. Long ago, Hinamizawa was feared and respected as a village of ogres. The villagers at the foot of the mountains worshipped the ogres, so Onikakushi was hallowed ground that you could never enter. It came to be said that if you entered carelessly, you were cursed by Oyashiro-sama. Those who set foot in Onikakushi, in other words, Hinamizawa, would be cursed. I could understand that. I know that. But for leaving to also be no good, that's... Also, the ogres, you see, they were being strictly watched by Oyashiro-sama, so they would not enter into our world. In other words, Oyashiro-sama probably restricted interaction between Onikakushi and the rest of the world. I see. I finally understood what sort of thing Oyashiro-sama was. Maybe. So basically, Oyashiro-sama is more like a warden than a protective deity, I guess, trying to keep this place isolated from the rest of the world. I guess that's how it would seem. I'm sorry, I don't know very much myself. This is mostly what was passed on to me from my grandmother. I could understand it a bit better if it was like that. Those who came to Hinamizawa would be cursed, and those who tried to leave would also be cursed. So, because Rena originally lived in Hinamizawa and moved away, she fulfilled the requirements for being cursed. So that means, because Rena moved away against its wishes, she was cursed by Oyashiro-sama. Is that what it adds up to? In short, that seems to be what it points to, I guess. As a matter of fact, soon afterwards, they did move back to Hinamizawa after all. Those who abandoned Hinamizawa and left were cursed. But then, why only Rena? Shouldn't Rena's parents also have been guilty of the same transgression by moving away and having been cursed? Also, in this day and age in Japan, shouldn't there be a lot of people coming and going? If every single one of them was cursed, then it'd be insane. But in reality, it wasn't that big of a deal at all. At most, there would be one person dying and one disappearing on the day of the Watanagashi. I don't like saying at most, though. Well, anyways, there's a lot I still don't know. Even if it was Oyashiro-sama's curse, it doesn't explain Rena beating her classmates with a metal bat, or why the victims wouldn't press charges. You don't think the victims were cowering because they believed that a terrible curse had befallen them, do you? Of course I didn't want to believe it. But more importantly, I had just realized something else. There was another bizarre connection that Rena made between Oyashiro-sama's curse and metal bats. Satoshi fell victim to Oyashiro-sama's curse and went missing. I had recently learned that Satoshi had also become infatuated with the metal bat right before he disappeared, just like me. Then Rena as well. She was affected by Oshiro-sama's curse. She confessed that much to the doctor. And the weapon which she had used at the time of the horrendous act was, again, a metal bat. And finally, me. I had encountered various things that were inexplicable, and now I was holding onto a metal bat. I was shocked when I learned that Satoshi did the same thing. It couldn't be. Had the same thing happen to Rena? But there was one critical difference between her and Satoshi's case. That being, Satoshi went missing after falling victim to the curse, but Rena was still here. Both of them had fallen victim to Yoshiro-sama's curse, yet they were met with different endings. And finally, me. I couldn't call it a coincidence anymore. Rena, Satoshi, and finally, me. Could it be that I really was under Yoshiro-sama's curse right now? No. More importantly than that, what should I do now? Satoshi had been demoned away, vanishing without a trace. Rena was fine. Fine? Rena had undergone a change. I could only believe that there was something that wasn't Rena residing within her. And, here right now, it was standing before me. Hello. Rena, please tell me. What happened to me? Rena stood imposingly, not answering. Satoshi disappeared, but Rena didn't disappear. So what will happen to me? I had never heard such an unpleasant laugh before. I've heard much more unpleasant. It had become akin to the sound of her breathing. It was no longer a voice or an expression of feeling. Don't worry. I'll save you. Rena took one step forward, still holding the hatchet high above her head. Now then. One step closer. Rena's face spread out to fill my vision. Speak. One step closer. Rena's nose was close enough to touch mine, and was still pushing closer. There's something you want to say, isn't there? I'll listen. I'll save you, okay? Speak, okay? Speak, okay? I slumped down, landing squarely on my butt. It wasn't for some pathetic reason. It was all I could do to get as far away from Rena. I had the gut feeling that I couldn't let her laughter end, because when that laughing ended, the moment I picked up on that feeling, my body moved by instinct. I sprang to my feet so fast I couldn't believe it, and pushed Rena away with both hands. Rena was light as a feather. Thrown about by the unbalanced weight of the hatchet, she was bent backwards as if she'd been carried off by the wind. After confirming that out of the corner of my eye, I dashed off at full speed. I was the perfect picture of fleeing like a greased pig. Get away from Rena. Run away. Survive. I couldn't think of anything other than this. While I was running, I remembered I'd been holding onto a bat the entire time. Such a worthless weapon. I couldn't believe I'd forgotten about this weapon at such an important time. I sped even farther down the winding path. I didn't even feel myself gasping for breath or my legs getting heavy. My body understood it as well. If I didn't run away from here, I wouldn't live. I could hear the laughter of that simulacrum of Rena coming from behind me. It rang through the trees and in my head, and slowly chiseled away at my sanity. The grove of trees thinned out, my field of vision suddenly expanding. Where was this? For a moment, I was bewildered by the scenery I felt I knew of, but couldn't quite remember. I quickly realized it was the dam site. The fact that I dashed madly and ended up in a place like this gave me a bad feeling, like I was following someone's scripted plot. It was a good view of my surroundings, but I didn't see a single soul here. This was a terrible spot for someone on the run, but there was no better place for an attacker. My heart was already on the verge of bursting. The muscles in my legs were screaming, but I didn't care. If I stopped here, then they might not even be able to scream for much longer. Even still, I glanced back, looking for an excuse to rest. Rena wasn't there. Instead, I saw two villagers walking around. I breathed a sigh of relief that it wasn't Rena, but a third party. Except the voice inside me rang the alarm once again. The villagers walking around weren't suspicious in and of themselves, but it bothered me. They both wore rough-looking clothes. Empty-handed, they definitely gave the impression that they were just out for a walk. But at this time of day, two adults wandering around without a purpose, it was enough to raise questions. But more than anything else, those eyes. They weren't chit-chatting while walking. They were both silent, heading forward, looking in my direction. Was I at the end of my rope and had finally started imagining things? I should run away. That was probably the best choice. If they weren't involved, I'd lose them easily by running. If they were part of the group after me, then they would come running after me. Either way, unless I hurried up, Rena would catch up with me. That's right, I was going to run. Saying that, the moment I began to turn tail, both of them rushed towards me, as if they knew exactly what I was thinking. Somewhere inside me, I had jumped to the conclusion that Rena was the only thing I needed to be afraid of. I made the assumption that I didn't need fear or anything else. Bad assumption. But right now, I realized just how blatantly wrong I was. Suddenly, the story of Oishi-san told me about the demons all leaving the village to hunt prey floated through the back of my mind. I could tell they were both coming after me without ever turning around because of their frenetic footsteps. It was frightening, being unable to shake Rena off as she slowly closed in on me, but this didn't even compare. Being pursued with such violent ferocity, the straightforward horror was unparalleled. One of the pursuer's arms grabbed my shoulder. Now it wasn't just their frenzied footsteps, but also the distinct sound of their breathing that I could hear. No, I could practically feel them breathing on me. They were already right behind me. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. Still running at full tilt, I felt the surrounding area go still. No, it felt like time itself had stopped. I turned my head back slightly in that frozen world, realizing how close my pursuers had gotten to me. I couldn't win against the legs of an adult. In less than the time it would take to blink twice, when this frozen time began moving again, they'd be right on top of me. On top of me? And then? Don't think about that, Keiichi. First, realize that you won't be able to shake them off like this. And the fact that you can't get away was a given, then you need to make a decision. Go with the right leg, or go with the left. You just need to decide which one. Let's go with the left. The moment I decided that, the temporal singularity burst into pieces. Right. Left. I swung the bat in a wide arc with my right arm. Using that inertia, I stopped and suddenly spun. No. What? The two of them were clearly startled. Momentarily losing sight of me, both of their outstretched arms ready to grab me, instead grasped empty space. The man on the right, I applaud him for being able to figure it out, spun around to the spot I shouldn't have been and faced me in astonishment. But it was too late. I didn't even need to swing my bat. All I needed to do was extend my arms as I turned around. It was by no means a heavy blow, but it seemed like it had enough power behind it to knock him off his feet. But just knocking him down wasn't enough to scare him away. He got back up in no time. Both of them took a fighting sense and were ready to face me. This made me certain they weren't just two people out for a walk. They were clearly after me. felt much easier than dealing with Rena. Just by not recognizing their faces, by not knowing them, it made things easier. I smiled wryly on the inside. What do you want with me? Next one's going to be right in your face, you bastard! It's fine if it was just a bluff. By barking out at them, I was able to fire myself up. They didn't respond. They spread out to either side of me with unbelievably calm expressions on their faces. One of them would grab onto my bat, and the other would hold me down. Was that their plan? Taking on both of them at once would be impossible. Hot sweat poured from every pore in my body. Then I'd just have to settle it with the first move. I'd step in and strike the first one down. Narrowing my target down to the man on the right, who had already been knocked down before, I stepped in and swung with all my might. There was no way for an unarmed person to guard against it. It would cause immense damage. If they blocked it with their arm, their bone would snap like a twig. If they turned their back to it, then it was possible that the blow would travel all the way to their vital organs. It looked like he was aware of this. He pushed farther through the kill zone between us and delivered a fist right into my gut. Not good. With this distance and the position in this state, there's no way to dodge. The world flipped upside down. I understood that I was being tossed around like a rag doll. I landed on the soft earth without a sound, feeling the rainy soil press against my face. It didn't hurt at all. But the moment I thought that, I suddenly felt pain coming from the abrasions on my skin, as well as the contents of my stomach being forced upwards, flooding my mouth with a bitter sensation. I knew very well that I didn't have the time to relish this experience. I stood up as quickly as I could, but at that moment, the other man was already barreling towards me. Being able to comprehend calmly that I simply couldn't dodge it made it all the more upsetting. After plowing into my stomach full force once again, my assailant twisted around behind me and locked his thick arm around my neck. My throat felt like it was being crushed by his immense strength. I couldn't even contemplate that I was being strangled, that I was about to go unconscious. My vision simply darkened and the silent whining noise began playing deep inside my mind. It took everything I had to keep myself from blacking out. While this was happening, the other man was more than likely standing in front of me. I wasn't about able to open my eyes, but I could feel that he was there. There was nothing I could do now. Unable to shake his arm off of me, I couldn't run. I couldn't fight back. Dire straits, I couldn't even come up with a phrase that adequately described my situation. Higurashi when they cry. Welcome to Hinamizawa. Alright. I did. It just hasn't arrived yet, unless these people are the Kantoku. Yeah, it's like manager, coach, chief, stuff like that. If I read it proper. A familiar ceiling. The smell of the bed and pillows. I knew them well. Was this my room? Normally there wouldn't be anyone in my room besides me, but the presence made me spring wide awake. When I did that, pain shot throughout my entire body. I'm feeling alright. I think you'd better just lie down for a bit. Why was Rena in my room? Blood began to surge through my muscles and my capillaries, but Rena's smile belonged to the Rena I knew well. I knew I shouldn't let myself feel this way, but I relaxed, thinking that this version of Rena was safe. Why am I... Don't you remember? After losing consciousness, nothing at all. My body had become more lethargic than I could ever have imagined. I guess that would be the expected outcome after exerting everything I had back there. I tried to at least clear my head, but I just couldn't shake the sluggish feeling out of my mind. I called the doctor. He should be here soon. I think you better just lie down until then. I wasn't injured seriously enough to merit calling a doctor, but knowing that someone impartial was coming was slightly reassuring. Why am I here? I'm sure I was at the dam site. That's what I want to know. What happened? When I got there, Keiichi-kun was already passed out. That's why I'm the one who wants to know. I was attacked by two weirdos. As I talked about it, I finally remembered what happened right before I passed out. Recalling that memory and the terror that went along with it caused the fogginess from my head to clear right up. Let's forget about those two for now. I didn't expect Rena to be nursing me. I thought Rena was trying to kill me. She would have had the perfect chance while I was unconscious. Not only did she not kill me, she had nursed me back to health. Amazing you could drag me all the way back here. Wasn't I heavy? Looking at Rena's delicate frame, it's hard to believe that she had not only gotten me back home, but even dragged me all the way up to the second floor. Did she have some help? Don't you remember, Keiichi-kun? Rena appeared a bit surprised, but still kept her smile. I only propped you up on my shoulder. You said you could walk on your own, and that you were fine. You don't remember? I didn't remember. My memory was fuzzy after the point where I lost consciousness. What about those two? Huh? When you got there, Rena, the ones with me, or rather, those two guys. There wasn't anyone. She said it bluntly. The way she stated it felt slightly unpleasant. I was just too timid at that time. I might have been able to force some answers out of Rena. But if I did that, then this kind Rena might transform into the scary Rena, who I didn't know. Fearing that, I didn't press any further. Thinking about it, it was the obvious choice. If both of those men were there, I don't think Rena would even have stood a chance. I couldn't find a way to explain it unless I assumed she brought me here after these two were already gone. Rena was still smiling. Her eyes sparkled warmly. Yet, I felt like I was hallucinating when I saw something. Something akin to a shadow slowly creeping across her face. That small omen sent shivers down my spine. While Rena was still Rena, I needed to make contact. I needed to contact Oishi-san. Rena stopped me when I tried to get out of bed. She said it would aggravate my wounds, so I should sleep. I'd like to go to the bathroom, though. No, sorry. Rena couldn't say anything else. While Rena stayed in the room, I quickly went downstairs to get the phone receiver in the living room. When I approached the front door, the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Must have been the doctor Rena had called. It was strange for a patient to welcome in the doctor who was making a house call, but it would be incredibly reassuring to have him here for the considerable time it would take Oishi-san to get here. I carelessly opened the door with that simple assumption, and regretted it almost instantly. Hi, Mion. Mion? Oh, you look just fine. I heard you collapsed, so I came to check up on you. How did you know I collapsed? I heard from Rena over the phone. Do I need any reason other than that? I understood why she would call a doctor. But why Mion too? Rena was descending the stairs behind me. Rena, doesn't Kei-chan look pretty alright? Jeez, you made me worry for nothing. That's true. Maybe I worried for nothing as well. They both began laughing. It appeared to be cheerful laughter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a darkness looming over me. Oh, what's up with this shoe rack? How did it get like this? The shoe rack that I'd smashed to pieces had been like that since yesterday. I fell, you see. And the bat I was holding at the time slammed into it. This is what happens when you swing around something you're not used to handling. I kept the fact that it was none of your business to myself. But leaving it like this will really startle your parents when they get home. I'll fix it up for you later. Now, come on, Kei-chan. The terminally ill need their rest. Come. Back in bed, back in bed. Both of them urged me up the stairs. I had no chance to call Luishi-san. I was pushed into my bed. As it was the first time Mion had been in my room, she began searching around it intently. She fiddled around the room and was scolded by Rena. You can imagine how it went. It was uncomfortable having my room poked around, but the conversation was so benign that it was heartwarming. During that conversation, Mion said something as though it was perfectly ordinary. Rena, did you call the director? The Kantoku? I'm guessing. Yep. Right after I called Michan. He said he'd be right over. Director? That out-of-place word gave me a bad feeling. Rena called the doctor, then called Mion. After that she called a director? Who was this director? Since Rena and Mion's conversation was so peaceful, it only felt slightly odd. What are you two talking about? Who's this director? Didn't you know, Kei-chan? We mean the director when we say director. Like the director of a movie. Or like the foreman of a construction site. I dug through all of my memories for a director who might have business with me. Only one thing came to mind. What Rena had just said. The construction site foreman. The very first victim of the first incident. The dismemberment at the damn construction site. The foreman? But that was strange. He was supposed to be dead. There was no way they could call him. I don't understand what you guys are talking about. What does that director have to do with me? You said he was coming. Did you mean to my house? I asked one obvious question after another, but all the two of them did was smile coolly at each other. There's a huge difference between how the two of them appeared and how my suspicions were playing out. Slowly, I felt discomfort and panic welling up inside me. I couldn't understand what Rena and Mion were talking about. Kei-chan, you've gotten into baseball lately, haven't you? Pretty sure the director will be happy to hear that. So, who is this director? The director is the director. So who is this director? Rena and Mion looked at each other and laughed haughtily. That disturbing cackle unpleasantly resounded around me. That laugh, long enough to be unsettling, ended abruptly. Oh yeah, we should finish up before the director comes. You remember, don't you, Kei-chan? Her face was laughing, but Mion's eyes told a different story. Remember what? Keiichi-kun, had you forgotten, I wonder? About the penalty. About the penalty. Did you really forget? The homework with the mochi? The homework where you were supposed to guess which one Rena made? You forgot about that homework, didn't you? I certainly did have that homework, but I had thrown away the rest of the mochi after I found that sewing needle. so I wasn't able to answer which one Rena made. The penalty for that? Why now? No doubt my question was written all over my face. Their answer to my question was with that dry laughter. I could no longer make heads or tails of anything. I began to think that this entire day was somehow insane. Strange. Incomprehensible. Being chased by Rena. Attacked by strange men. The penalty Mion and Rena were talking about. What were these two laughing at? It didn't take long for me to realize I had been dragged into an abnormal situation. Who were these two? Who were these people? Who were these doppelgangers of Rena and Mion? Rena had gotten behind me at some point. Why was she pinning my arms behind my back? What are you doing? Don't move. This is your penalty. My body was already very sluggish, and Rena pinning my arms made it that much harder to move. I seriously tried to struggle, but she wouldn't even budge. My panic began to well up, and I realized that this was beyond the realm of jokes and pleasantries. This freakishly monstrous strength. It would have been impossible for the Rena that I knew. Then these thin, frail arms grasped me firmly. Whose arms were they? K-chan, no struggling. The club rule number, it doesn't matter which one. You can't fight against the penalty. Mion, no, that thing that looked like Mion spoke to me like how Mion would speak to me. But I was certain this was not Mion. Someone who wasn't Mion. Someone who was just pretending to be Mion. Need to finish this up before the director comes. Mion fished into her pockets, pulled out something bizarre. I could tell what it was just by looking, but for such a thing to be in her pocket, my mind wouldn't accept it. What is that? It was a small syringe. It was a small, clear syringe, the kind a doctor might use if he went to them with a high fever. Rena held me even tighter, and I could hear that clattering laughter that no longer sounded like laughter blaring into my ear. That eerie laughter. It wasn't something that Rena I knew could ever produce from her own throat. This thing that was pretending to be Rena, was this their real laugh? Unable to defend myself, the syringe Mion was holding drew closer, and that needle tip was waved in front of my face countless times. Don't worry, don't worry. It won't hurt, it won't hurt. What are you planning on doing? What kind of sick joke is this? What are you saying, K-chan? You know exactly what's going on, don't you? About what? I don't understand any of this at all. I know you know. No use playing the fool this late in the game. Stop talking nonsense to try and confuse me. We're going to have done to you what happened to Tomitake-san. What? The same as Tomitake-san? I didn't really understand what she meant. What did it have to do with the syringe? You're playing dumb, Keiichi-kun. You should have realized it by now. Rena whispered into my ear, laughing as if to admonish me. But even the way she spoke was repulsive beyond compare. Playing dumb? Me? About what? What do you mean, the same as Tomitake-san? Everyone thought at first that it was a hit and run, except when the officer got closer to check if he was still alive. He soon noticed it wasn't a normal situation. His throat was scratched out. From a knife or something? No. Nails. Nails? Nails as in fingernails? With those gouged through? That's right. Tomitaki-san had clawed out his own throat with his own nails and died. There's no way someone could die like that. So then, for that to happen, we thought drugs were to blame, but nothing of that nature was detected. That's right. The police didn't find any drugs in Tomitaki-san's system. The police told me they didn't find any drugs in Tomitaki-san's body. The two of them laughed together with that sickening laughter. Of course they'd laugh. To assume that such a medicine didn't exist just because the police didn't know about it was completely foolish. Meaning, the drug that caused Tomitaki-san to die in such a bizarre manner did exist. If Mion injected this into me, then that would probably be all the proof I needed. That would basically mean I'd end up the same as Tomitaki-san. Become hysterical, scratching out my throat in my last moments, then die. For such an outrageous drug to exist. For Mion to be holding it, and that I was about to be injected with it. At that moment, I did not feel there was any need whatsoever to question it. What kind of idiot, when he's trying to dodge a ball flying straight for his face, has time to think of a reason as to why it's flying at him? Just give up. Alright then. Mion's actions lacked any gravitas, and that made it even more terrifying. There was none of the ceremony like when someone is sentenced to death. There was no hesitation at all, as if she were brushing her teeth. Mion reached out with one hand and grabbed onto my chest. It felt like electricity had run through the back of my head, and the entire world had gone dark. Did I stand up too fast? Or did someone hit me really hard in the back of the head? Having lost my sense of balance, I was assaulted by a wave of dizziness. Higurashi, when they cry. Welcome to Inamizawa. If I were in that position of any sort, I would not just be standing there accepting it. I would be struggling like all hell. She has my arms pinned behind me. Well, that means I still got legs, don't I? I got something. I've got a shoulder. I've got an elbow. I've got something I can do to do something in that situation. Not just stand there stupidly and let somebody come towards me with a syringe. Alright then, though. I squatted down for a bit. When I came back to my senses, my entire room had changed drastically. The numbness in my head was gone, and slowly I could tell blood was flowing to my extremities again. How long had I been squatting here? How many minutes? Or has it been hours? It was almost as if the hands of the clock had stopped moving the entire time my eyes were closed. That's how little time passed. Really? The air in the room wasn't filled with that madness from before. Only a dull silence. Rena wasn't there, pinning my arms, and Mion wasn't there about to inject me with a needle. No way. Could be all of it was a hallucination? There was no other presence in the room besides my own. It was the weirdest experience I'd ever felt. I was certainly with Rena and Mion. I doubted my sanity for a moment, but I was also seized with some sort of comfort. I guess that terrible ordeal was a hallucination. Neither Rena nor Mion, they wouldn't ever do something so terrible. My head grew hot. I could tell my emotions were welling up. Why? That wasn't a reason to cry. Why? It was sorrow. Why was I sad? I don't understand. I don't understand. Kind to everyone, not discriminating against age or gender. Mion. That Mion was sprawled by the window in an unnatural pose. Blood stained her a deep red from her head down to her chest. The bright crimson smeared on the walls. That splatter had undoubtedly come from Mion. She always had that bright smile, and was kind to me from the day I transferred. Rena. That same Rena was slumped at my feet, I was making the same pool of blood as Mion. Didn't just take it. Apparently not. I couldn't comprehend what had happened. Did someone come to save me? Then they beat these two down with this metal bat? I finally noticed the weight in my right hand. How long had it been there? It was Satoshi's metal bat. It was covered in a deep red. There was no doubt that this was the weapon used to mutilate both of them. And I was holding that weapon. I was the only person in the house. What? I was looking at this objectively. I couldn't think of anyone other than myself who could have done it. I did this? That's right. Keiichi Maibara. Of course I did it. I told myself gently, as if coaxing myself. Hey, me. There's no reason for you to remember it, nor is there a need to regret it. Eat or be eaten. You get that, don't you? But the blood, there's so much. Neither Rena nor Mion had moved an inch. It wasn't just a split forehead and a trickle of blood. Nothing that simple. The entire room was splattered with red, and that told me it didn't end with just 2 or 3 strikes. Are they dead? Both of them? The depths of my mind were calm, but on the surface I was panicking and agitated. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. What happened to your usual calm self? Come on now. Do like you always do. Throw your head back and take a deep breath. Come on. Once. Twice. Breathe deeply. Calm down. Calm down. I chanted that over and over in my head, and relaxed. Color came back to my vision, and smells reinfused the air. At the same time, I remembered what happened when I blacked out. Rena and Mion had attacked me. They were about to inject me with whatever caused the same symptoms as Tomitake-san. But right before that happened, I fought back. I twisted my whole body and threw Rena as she was pinning my arms. Then I followed through with my spin and ran my foot as hard as I could into Mion's torso. It was soft. Rena tried jumping on me, so I tackled her as hard as I could and slammed her against the wall. I didn't let that brief moment of having them off balance slip by. Oh, you and my internet's wigging out. It's raining, which is probably why. If the stream gets really bad, let me know. I'm gonna try and press forward. I didn't let that brief moment of having them off balance slip by. Satoshi's bat was left carelessly by the side of my desk. Weep. At that moment, everything went pitch black. There was nothing recorded past this point in the videotape of my mind. No, that wasn't right. It wasn't that there was nothing recorded. It was recorded just fine. Just the other me inside myself had told me not to look and had turned off the TV. I seemed to be back to normal. Just because the screen had gone black and I couldn't see it, didn't mean that the videotape within me hadn't recorded it. The TV was just off. The video was still playing. The tape within me, creaking along, still playing. On the other end of that pitch-black screen, that horrifying video was still playing on. Compared to this, though, this, the scene right before my eyes, was still difficult to take in. There was blood splattered everywhere on the walls, the two of them in these unnatural poses. Not a sign of movement from them. I couldn't even tell if they were breathing. No matter what the circumstances were, my friends, these girls, I had attacked them. I may have even killed them. But if I hadn't done this, I would have been the one done for. Balancing that out on an imaginary scale, it felt odd that I'd even feel bad about it. Even if it wasn't a bit excessive, this was justifiable self-defense. The proof was all here. The two of them collapsed here, and me on syringe. Me on syringe filled with some unknown drug would certainly solve the mystery surrounding the incidents with Tomitaki-san. And from the fact that both of these two were involved, they'd be able to pick out the criminals one after the other. Still, I might be suspected for this, but that was just fine. Anyway, now this should be a police affair. This wouldn't fade into the darkness like Rena's past incidents. As long as the police were involved, that should bring this to a close. They'll probably revisit their investigations on the chain of incidents. Oishi-san would definitely get to the bottom of it. Meaning, my wish of not wanting to die, of wanting to know the truth, that would be fulfilled in this most basic form. It was all a matter of time now. The doctor Rena called should be getting here soon. I'll confess everything to him. I needed to contact Oishi-san. At that moment, I remembered. Besides the doctor, a director had been called. It was easy to imagine that they were someone deeply involved with the incidents, judging from Rena and Mion's conversation. The ache in my chest caused by the gruesome deed I'd done dissipated rapidly. It was not over yet. This place was no longer safe. Stay calm, Keiichi Maebara. It's not over yet. I need to live long enough to tell the police of this incident. At that moment, I felt like I heard someone's voice from outside. Since people were speaking, it must mean there was more than one person. I moved the curtain ever so slightly and peered outside. It was a bizarre sight. About 4 or 5 grown men were all gathered at the gate. They very much resembled the 2 men I had assaulted, who had assaulted me at the dam site today. Those 2 might even be among them. There was one person there wearing a white coat, but he didn't look like a doctor at all. My gut told me he was in disguise, only posing as a doctor. That guy would probably ring the bell and get me to open the front door. Pretend to be a doctor to get me to open the door, and then the rest of them would all rush in at once. At that moment, I saw the car parked behind the men. My heart nearly skipped a beat. The white van. No mistaking it. That van, the one that had tried to run me down. The man in the white coat entered the gate and headed towards the front door. The rest of the men hid in the bushes and watched him. I probably couldn't pretend that I wasn't home. Undoubtedly, they'd just break the window and enter. I needed to get out of here somehow. Then use a public phone to contact Oishi-san. Then meet up somewhere. First of all, I need a weapon. Then shoes. But before all that, there was one thing I had to do. I had no intention of dying. I'd live, and reveal the truth about this nonsensical curse of Uyashiro-sama. But what would happen from here on, regardless of how determined I was, may bring about my demise. And that was why there's one thing more important than getting out of here right now. I need to get that clock out quickly and take down the note hidden behind it. Damn it. The tape was sticking to it fast. It'd be fine if it was torn a little. I opened up slightly, torn note, and began writing another passage with a ballpoint pen. I wasn't able to inform Oishi-san. Then the only thing I could rely on was this note. I'd never thought a piece of torn, college-ruled notebook paper could be this reliable before. I had no time. I'd only write what I knew right now. I needed to leave some sort of information that would lead them to uncover the truth. Rena and Mion are conspirators of the perpetrators. This was an undeniable fact. I still didn't want to believe it, but it was a fact. Anyway, I'd leave all the information that would help lead them to finding the perpetrators. There are 4 or 5 adults, maybe more. They have a white van. This is everything I was able to see from the window. There may be more. Also, there was that unidentified person known as the director. To begin with, the term director didn't even mesh with Hinamizawa at all. If they were going to include the directors from the past incidents, then the only one is the construction foreman, the victim from the first murder. The very first victim in the chain of incidents. Killed in a lynching, his body divided into 6 pieces. His right arm was never discovered. The police should have confirmed that death. But Rena and Mion did both call him director. They said director. They wouldn't use that term to refer to someone who was dead. The police would never even conceive that someone who was deceased could be involved. Could that be some sort of oversight? I didn't know. But even if I didn't know, it could be a big hint for Oishi-san. That's right. They needed to start fresh from the first incident. It wasn't just a simple dismemberment, but the start of the string of mysterious deaths that would follow. So, then, there must be something hidden there. Please reinvestigate the victim from the dismemberment incident. He's alive. His death should have been established after an autopsy. Logically, you would think as much. But was that really the case? Could it have been some sort of ploy that they were able to deceive the police with? I shouldn't jump to conclusions. But he may still be alive. I had no time to ponder that right now. Oh yeah, there's something even more important I needed to write. Tomitaki-san's death was from an unknown drug. That's right. That drug. It was an irreplaceable piece of evidence. No doubt just by having this, everything would be uncovered. I couldn't just leave that vital clue lying on the floor. This syringe is proof. Writing that down, I stuck the syringe under the back of the clock with plenty of tape, so it absolutely would not slip out and fall to the floor. Firmly. Firmly. Ding dong. The bell rang. They were here. I couldn't write any more. But even still, there was one last thing that I had to write. I have no idea why it has become like this. This may be the closest thing to the truth out of everything I wrote on this note. If you are reading this, then I am probably already dead, though you may or may not find my body. If I was going to write out everything that could happen, either dying from the curse, or being demoned away, you who are reading this, please uncover the truth. That is my only desire. With this, my last will and testament was complete. It wasn't certain that I was going to die, but it was my final plea, just in case. I folded the note, stuck it back onto the back of the clock, and returned the clock back to its usual spot. I couldn't help but pray. Oishi-san, if something happens to me, I leave the rest to you. After that, I gazed down silently at Rena and Mion. This was probably the last time we'd ever see each other. Rena, Mion, I really had thought all of us were friends. But why did it end up like this? I never had any fun in my previous school. I only worried about standardized test scores. But out of the school I hoped to get into was where I really wanted to go, or a safety net. That was all I talked about. It was a dull life. The people called friends were also my rivals in studying, in competitions, in personal records, and standardized test scores. Everyone here taught me how unhealthy that lifestyle was. This month was really fun. Making a fuss over lunch, making a fuss over the club, making a fuss over the festival. Something hot began dripping from my face. Uncontrollable tears. I should have had no obligations to shed tears for them. But they wouldn't stop. Even if they were after my life. Even if they were trying to kill me. Everything that happened this month, I wouldn't forget it. Or it could be those happy days were all a facade as well. Was it all a trap, meticulously orchestrated up until the day to ensnare me? Could it have been that I had just arbitrarily assumed that they were my friends? That couldn't have been the case. Both Rena and Mion, they really were my friends. Those happy days, there was nothing fake or unclear about them. Someone probably forced them to try to kill me. Or their minds were taken over, possessed by the supernatural entity known as Oyashiro-sama. Regardless, both Rena and Mion, they were the best friends ever. And, when they were coming after me, it wasn't of their own volition. But they weren't the kind of people to sell off their friends, no matter what means were employed to force them. And there was no way such a thing as being possessed by Oishiro-sama could happen in reality. Then, did the real Rena and Mion come after me? What was I thinking? What a silly, dumb idea. Having beaten down both Rena and Mion, I was still debating if they were the real ones or fakes. There was no real or fake, only the reality that was before me. Rena and Mion were sprawled out at my feet. That was the only truth. I was only trying to twist the facts to my benefit, that I had beaten my friends to death. No matter how I spun it, it wouldn't change reality. Rena and Mion were both dead. It felt like there was a crack in the dam of strange emotions I was holding back. It felt like my calm state, which was nothing more than a bluff, had receded, and in that opening, insanity was leaking out. I killed them. I killed them. Rena and Mion. I killed them. The doorbell rang again. The unrelenting echo pulled me back into a state of composure once again. I didn't have a moment to spare. Quickly, I needed to get away. I didn't want to die. I would uncover everything after that. The identity of whoever or whatever had pushed me this far. Even if I had to drink mud and eat grass, I would survive. I would survive. I would definitely survive. I killed Rena for that very reason. I also killed Mion. I went that far just to keep living, so I can't die. For my sake, and for the sake of the late Rena and Mion, I have to survive. I ran towards the door and grabbed my shoes. The doorbell rang again, as if to urge me on. Behind the single, solitary door, they were there. Keeping quiet, I headed towards the kitchen, headed towards the back door. Before opening the back door, I put my ear to it and checked for people outside. No one? After I put on my shoes, I opened the door slowly so as not to make a sound. There he is! The back door! A piercing voice echoed out. That voice stabbed through me, setting my hair on end. I had to run. Get out of here, Keiji. One after another, I felt stuff like rationale and intelligence, those things you use when you have time to spare, spill out of me. I didn't feel any pain from the branches scratching my arms and forehead. My autonomously pulsing heart also felt neither fatigue nor pain. My entire being just wished to live. There was nothing else it desired. It probably had no complaints whatsoever, so of course I wouldn't feel fatigue. I just ran, just recklessly rushing in the direction I was already heading. Even if nobody was chasing after me, I'd still be running like this. There wasn't a thought in my mind about where I was headed. Turning around, I felt a presence right next to me. That presence was, without a doubt, chasing me like my shadow. If I took even one misstep, I would be devoured. That's what I thought. So I didn't turn around. I didn't stop. I ran, at full speed. Quack, quack, quack. That was the chirping of the Higurashi telling me it was evening, trying to tell me something. And then I finally heard it, the wailing cry of the victims who didn't make it. Would I be joining them? Only the Higurashi knew. They knew everything. They definitely knew. So, I ran towards where I could hear more of the Higurashi's chirps. But the farther I ran, the farther away their chirping became. I couldn't get near them. Why are you all running away? Was it my fault? Was I the one to blame? Then I'll apologize. I'm sorry. 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 I felt that only the Higurashi knew. Now, where have I heard that before? When they cry. Higurashi. When they cry. Welcome to Hinamizawa. Alright. That's definitely a different turn of events that I wasn't expecting. The smoking room was filled with a cloud of cigarette smoke. The expensive smoke filter gave off some crackling electric noise, but it didn't seem like it was doing anything at all. Why do smokers have to be shoved so far down this corridor where the sun didn't even reach? I recalled hearing that the tax revenue from tobacco was about 1/10 of the municipality's revenue. We were the most heavily taxed members of this municipality, so I really wish they'd show us a little more respect. Artwork. Artwork. Why would you discard the 5 manzu there? It's just decreasing your options. One of the other detectives was having a staring contest with the mahjong magazine called Next Turn. You're still in tenpai if you cut to 5 manzu. If you're betting on a high tay, then shouldn't you be going into it with a manga? Look at my channel. Look at the pond. They all discarded a 5 manzu. It's a safe tile. You'd hate it if, at the end, someone was sitting on a tenpai in the last turn, wouldn't you? The kid let out another groan, put out a cigarette, then took out another one. I've tried to play mahjong a bit. I like the solitaire mahjong, that's pretty nice, but like the poker mahjong, I don't get that one. I don't. Of course, it's never really explained. You're just expected to know how to play it, which doesn't help with the ones I've tried. I just don't agree. Why would you reduce your own options? By the way, you can't kill Ron with your winning tile in that high tay. What? Why is that? Just then, I heard a voice coming from down the hall. Are you here, Oishi-san? We have a call from a civilian. Oh, ain't that something? Well, see you soon. Why can't you call Ron on it? Ron. Oh, hold on for a second. Oishi-san. The man sitting in the seat Oishi-san was heading towards waved at the telephone receiver. Outside line. From a payphone. Oh, why thank you. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. This is Oishi. Who is it? Oishi-san. Hello? If it isn't Maebara-san. Why, good evening. From the tone, Maebara-kun's voice, I already knew he was in a predicament. This was the first time Maebara-kun had phoned me, and he was calling from a payphone. Please calm down. Did something happen? You could say that, yes. Calculate points. Well, it was never like fully explained to me. The rules I was given was like 5 pages of 3 sentences. Okay, like, okay, this is a Rowan. You want to try and get this? Here's that. Go. But why? How? What do you mean? What's the point? And I've played electronic versions of it. mini games of other aspects, and so they just shove you into it, expecting you to know how to play. And it's like, I don't know how to play. What are the rules? Does this work? No, no, no. You lose. Okay. I probably could be good at it, but I just was never given a full chance. Anyway, please calm down. Did something happen? Well, His voice was erratic over the line. He had completely lost his sense of composure. After checking that nobody else could hear, I prompted him in a hushed tone. What happened? Calm down, Maibara-san. I can have the local officers head to your location. I'll be there soon too. I think that's impossible. His voice was quivering and hoarse. He wasn't surrounded by people, even as he was making this call, was he? Maibara-san, you're calling from a payphone right now, right? Where is that payphone? There was no other sounds beside Maibara-kun's voice. It had to be a phone booth. I scratched out a note and thrust it out my colleague sitting across from me. Hinamizawa, phone booth. He understood quickly and hastily started on the internal lines. Calm down, Maibara-san. What is your current situation? It was best practice to avoid flustering someone panicking, but this was an urgent case. Maibara-kun didn't just get in trouble, get away, and then call me. He was in the midst of something dangerous right now. But yelling at Maibara-kun right now would just needlessly cause him to be even more frantic. Maibara-kun wasn't just calling to seek help. He was trying to tell us something more than that. And whatever that was, if I didn't get it from this call, I was certain there would never be another chance. My colleague pushed a note in front of me. There's only one booth in Hinamizawa. A patrol car is on the way. 5 minutes. That's too long. How many officers are in there? 2. Not enough. If it was as I imagined, there were likely quite a few people surrounding Maibara-kun. 5 minutes was too long. Did you call the officer stationed in Hinamizawa? He's scheduled to be on patrol. They're currently out, and it'll be impossible to contact them. God damn. Kuma-chan, bring the car around. Understood. Hello? Oishi-san? Hello? It's alright. I can hear you loud and clear. There's something wrong with Maibara-kun. That wasn't a normal coughing sound. Vomiting? Or was it blood? He had already been attacked? Was he injured? Maibara-san, the police are on the way. They'll be there in a couple of minutes, so hold on somehow. Hello? Can you hear me? Maibara-san? I could hear on the other end of the line that he was having a coughing fit. The worst possible situation popped into my head. Maibara-san, who's the culprit? How many are there? I thought at first the culprit was human. I couldn't tell if that was a cough or vomiting. Are you alright? Maibara-san. I thought that the culprit was a person. I had not Oyashiro-sama's curse up until right now. But I guess in the end it was an intense bout of coughing, then vomiting. But I guess Oyashiro-sama does exist. No, he's here. Aizawa-san, please, just please calm down. I've been thinking it was strange for a while now. It's been following me this whole time. I run, and run, and run, and run. It just sticks to me like my shadow. But slowly, so slowly, it's digging itself into my back. Maibara-san, are they right now, perhaps right behind you? Behind me. Right behind me. Please, Maibara-san. I can tell you're scared. But please, who is it that's right behind you? I can't just look behind me. If I do, I'll... I understand that you're scared. But please, tell me. You just need to turn around a bit. Who is it? Who's behind you, Maibara-san? Right after I said that, I could hear him vomiting intensely. What follows was a nightmarish sound. Maebara-san, it couldn't be that you were clawing out your own throat? There was no answer, but I could hear something like scratching. There was a bang, as if something was being hit. Maebara-kun had probably dropped the receiver. I could hear groaning and vomiting over on the other end, and a repeating abnormal noise. Hello! Hello! Maebara-san! Hello! I knew how far away my voice would sound on the other end, but I couldn't help but shout. At that moment I heard whispering coming from the other end. I couldn't tell what he was saying. From the way he was saying it, was he talking to himself? Or was he talking to someone there? Hello? Maebara-san? Rather than whispering, it was some kind of mantra he was chanting over and over. I focused my senses, trying to pick up what he was saying. What was he repeating? What exactly? Beep. Suddenly, the line went dead. Did he use up his time? It was because it was a payphone. It was because it cut out so abruptly. The last thing he said came out so clearly in my mind. Oishi-san, the car's good to go. Oishi-san? It was... I'm sorry. Oishi-san? That's what he was repeating over and over. He said, I'm sorry. I had a gut feeling. There's no longer a need to hurry. I could hear the chirp of the Higurashi spilling in from the open window. I should have been able to hear them this entire time. I just wasn't paying any attention. Why did I focus on them all of a sudden? They were trying to tell me something? Only the Higurashi knew. That's how I felt. June 1983. In Hinamizawa, a remote village near Shishibone City, there was a murder involving 2 female students. The suspect is Keiichi Maebara, aged 1X. The suspect called over his 2 female classmates, Rena Ryugu, Mion Sonozaki, to his house, and beat them to death with a metal bat. The scene of the crime was the suspect's room on the 2nd floor of his house. The inside of the room was covered with a significant quantity of splattered blood, and there were signs of a struggle with the victims. In addition to the scene of the crime, the entryway, living room, and kitchen all had traces of a struggle. At the entryway, the shoe rack and wall had evidence of being impacted by a strong, blunt force. It is believed to have been the same bat as the murder weapon. Having no traces of blood, it is believed the destruction occurred before the murders. There is a possibility that the suspect overpowered his victims to keep them from fleeing. In the living room, the rug had been pulled back, then thrown aside. It is hard to believe that this had a connection to the struggle with the victims, and thus the reason for this remains unknown. In the kitchen, the garbage bag was torn apart, and its contents were spread out on the floor. Garbage was strewn about in the surrounding area, and handprints believed to belong to the suspect were discovered. It is believed that the suspect had for some reason taken out the garbage and struck it with his fists. The reason for this remains unknown. In addition, there was a note stuck to the fridge. The words, "Was there a needle?" were written on it. The meaning behind this remains unclear. Just in case, the garbage was searched, but a needle was not discovered. Though the garage door was functional, it had been left open ever since the suspect moved in. The garage door was found closed. The suspect's fingerprints were discovered on the garage door. The reason behind this remains unknown. The suspect fled the scene of the crime. However, a patrolling officer, Hinamizawa local PD, found the suspect collapsed inside a phone booth. At the time of discovery, the suspect was unconscious, in critical condition. He was rushed to the local hospital for treatment, but did not regain consciousness and died 24 hours later. The results of the autopsy indicate the immediate cause of death to have been hypervolemic shock. It was determined that the suspect had clawed out at his own throat with his fingernails, and the resulting bleeding caused his death. With a similarity to the deaths of Tomitaki-san the prior week, the police believe there to be a connection and have opened an investigation. However, due to the wishes of the local authorities, it will be a confidential investigation. Due to the abnormal nature of his death, it was suspected that drugs were involved, but as with Tomitaki-san, no traces were discovered. What prompted all this remains inexplicable. As such, this case is being treated as an act committed on impulse. However, with several accounts of the suspect's bizarre behavior leading up to the incident, it is possible that this was premeditated. Separated from his group of friends, isolation, inexplicable behavior. Several days before the incident, the suspect began carrying around a metal bat. The suspect was observed displaying aggressive behavior, as well as talking to himself at school. His classmates have actually heard portions of what he was saying. 2 days before the incident, the suspect declared to his parents the possibility of his death. Due to these circumstances, the police have begun an investigation on the possibility that this crime was not committed on impulse, but was instead planned several days in advance. The reason for this remains unknown. Afterwards, a note was found in the suspect's room that he had written himself. The note was written on 2 sheets from a B5 college-ruled notebook that had each been torn in half, and as if trying to conceal it, was stuck behind a clock on the wall. The contents are as written in the appendix. We're just trying the same symbol. Yeah, I like that one too. I believe it's considered solitaire. The police believe it to be strongly related to the incident. The police changed their line of investigation based on the possibility that the suspect was involved in some sort of incident himself. However, no further clues were found, casting doubt on the credibility of the note. Was the crime impulsive or premeditated? Was the situation unclear and no further developments? The case has been labeled as unresolved. However, the following year, suspicion arose regarding the nature of the note. The note was not written on 2 halves of B5 paper from 2 separate sheets, but was originally a single sheet of B5 paper. In order to erase several lines from the middle, someone had torn them out. Judging from the size of the letters, the missing section is estimated to be 2 to 3 lines. It is highly probable that the person who eliminated the lines in question is not the suspect. In addition, judging from traces of large quantities of cell phone tape being stuck to the back of the clock, speculation that something other than the note was stuck there has arisen. The person who first discovered the crime was a detective rumored to have a connection with the incident, Kurado Oishi. He underwent voluntary questioning, but denies involvement in any damages to the note. The suspect's note. I, Keiji Marbara, am in fear for my life. I do not know why they are after my life. The only thing I do know is that it has to do with Oyashiro-sama's curse. Rena and Mian are conspirators or the perpetrators. There are 4 or 5 adults, maybe more. They have a white van. This is all on the first sheet. The section below has been ripped out. This is from the second sheet. The section above has been ripped out. I have no idea why it has become like this. If you are reading this, then I am probably already dead, though you may or may not find my body. You who are reading this, please uncover the truth. That is my only desire. Keiichi Maebara. Higurashi, When They Cry. 7th expansion presents Welcome to Inamizawa, When They Cry. New scenario has been unlocked. All cast review session has become available. To play it, select extra on the title screen, and then pick the all cast review session. Okay. Please uncover the truth. Alright. That'll be it for today. I haven't actually had a chance to watch it yet, and the download we had stalled out. Just give me some time on that. I want to watch it. I'm planning to watch it, but I haven't been able to watch it yet. I'll get back to you when I'm able to. And yesterday, even if it did download and I was able to watch it, my dad roped me into helping him with pulling apart an axle on my mom's car so that we can repair it. No, it's I want to watch it, and it's like right there, ish. But I will get back to you on that one. Trust me. But yeah, give me a second here. I'll guess for you, assistant. 20 minutes to only read aloud. Discussion of the story's events. Alright. Tomorrow, alright. Yeah, no, my internet's starting to go up and down. It's raining outside, which affects the signal out there, so I'm gonna call it for today. I had a couple of dips already. Today's Tuesday. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll figure it out. I'll figure out something. I like reading extra bonus behind the scenes stuff like that. But 20 minutes. Yeah, we'll just do it tomorrow and lump it in with chapter 2. I do have that downloaded. I think I have the modded version set up. I haven't tried it out yet. But yeah. I'll see you guys later. And I will watch that movie as soon as I'm able to. Yeah, thanks for the chat. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. This story has definitely taken some very different turns. Ones I wasn't entirely expecting. I knew that syringe was gonna be missing. It's like putting things in the trust of other people is not a guarantee. I didn't expect Keiichi to die like that. I didn't expect it to go on to another year. But I had an intuition on bits, but I did not expect it to go that direction. Anyway, have a good day, guys. And be careful. Listen to the Higurashi if you're able to, because they might be warning you of something. Just take care, be safe. Don't go to the damn construction site. That's a bad thing to do, in my opinion. Take care, guys.